Hi folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want to tell you a story about, I think it's going to explain something that's been on my mind for a long time. So what's the about? It's about my nephew. When he was a young kid, he had an aquarium in their living room, and he had an Oscar in that aquarium. Now, Oscars were really popular several years ago for people having them in their fish tank at home. They grew very quickly, and they appeared to be quite bright. Well, let me tell you the story of what happened when I went there to stay with my sister and her family and my nephew, Billy. I would come in the door, and Billy would be behind me, and I'd come in the door to the living room, and the Oscar would be in the tank, and it wouldn't do much of anything. Didn't react, really. And I wondered, does it even know I'm here? Does it even matter? I'm not in his world. Then my nephew Billy would come into the living room, and the Oscar was watching all the time. And as soon as Billy would come in, his fins would start to vibrate, and he would get all fidgety and everything. What he was doing was getting excited because he figured, well, I'm going to get fed. Well, why was he figuring that? Because he recognized Billy's face. And we've talked about before, I've talked to you about how bright crows are. They're one of the most intelligent of all beings, let alone birds. They're one of the most intelligent beings on the planet. And it's been proven that they recognize people's faces very well, and they tend to like some people. They'll, for whatever they sense in them, and then other people, they don't like it all, and they'll hold a grudge. They will never forget that grudge they have against that person. Well, what if fish are the same? I mean, a lot of the physiology of fish and birds are similar. The way they hear is very similar. With a fish, the lateral line along the side of their body receives a vibration. It transmits this along the body up to their head and into their brain, and it's deciphered by their brain to be a certain type of sound. That's how they hear. Very similar to how birds hear. Well, maybe maybe their brains are very similar in other ways, and maybe fish really do take in a lot more than we think. I was thinking about that. Another report that I gave you was about the so-called seeming connection between different species of fish and how they orient their activity based on deferential or whatever activities that seem to take place. I was talking about Wilson Hill and the story of the big northern pike and the largemouth bass. But if the Oscar can differentiate a person's face and have that kind of feeling, then maybe fish maybe they're a lot smarter than we think. Maybe, yes, they do differentiate between different lures we put in the water. Maybe they do know what a worm is, and maybe they do recognize a hellgrammite for what it is. And, I mean, I don't have the answers to this, but I have the observations to these things, and it tells me a lot more about the world around me than I would have known if I hadn't been able to see it. So, something to think about. But I do know that when I'm telling you about different baits, different smells that fish can relate to, different sounds, and how it all fits into a puzzle for them. It's their world, and they relate and act based on these signals. And so maybe we take some of the things that the tackle companies are giving us more seriously. Maybe some of these new changes in lures really will make a difference. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.